Just the wine list, he'd sneered, eyes raking over her like she was part of the damn furniture. That's when I knew she was screwed. Veronica Dripping Ice had just sighed. He's had a trying day, darling. LV Amigorch and all that noise. But Maya? She was working a double. Parsons' fund draining faster than a spilled glass. They thought she was invisible. They didn't see the fire in her eyes, the designs sketched on napkins, the quiet dignity they were about to stomp on. Thing is, Davenport had a secret too. A deal gone south, a ruthless reputation eating at him. He thought money made him untouchable. He has no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Just the wine list, he'd sneered, eyes raking over her like she was part of the damn furniture. That's when I knew she was screwed. Veronica Dripping Ice had just sighed. He's had a trying day, darling. LVMA and all that noise. But Maya? She was working a double. Parsons' fund draining faster than a spilled glass. They thought she was invisible. They didn't see the fire in her eyes, the designs sketched on napkins, the quiet dignity they were about to stomp on. Thing is, Davenport had a secret too. A deal gone south, a ruthless reputation eating at him. He thought money made him untouchable. He has no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. The air inside Trattoria dal Valente was a humid velvet, thick with the smug perfume of the city's 1% and the sharp tang of 20-year balsamic. Another Tuesday, another meticulously orchestrated feeding frenzy for the city's elite. For Maya Kowalski, it was just Tuesday. Another grueling shift standing between her and a rapidly evaporating dream. She moved like a phantom between tables, a ghost in a black apron, dodging the elbows of entitled patrons and the whispered orders of the kitchen staff. At 24, she knew the restaurant's choreography better than the maitre d'. She could navigate the crowded floor blindfolded, anticipate a spilled drink before it happened, and decipher the nuances of a perfectly chilled request with the precision of a sommelier. But beneath the practiced smile and the effortless grace lay a carefully guarded ambition, Parsons' School of Design. Her rent-controlled shoebox in Astoria was less a home, more a launch pad for her dreams. Each threadbare curtain, each chipped coffee mug, fueled the fire of her aspirations. The Parsons Fund, meticulously built from tips and the occasional lucky scratch-off, was her lifeline. It represented freedom from the soul-crushing monotony of endless shifts, the chance to trade her apron for a designer smock, the clatter of plates for the satisfying click of a loom. Tonight, however, felt different. The restaurant vibrated with an almost palpable tension. The low hum of conversation was punctuated by sharper tones, the impatient clinking of silverware, the barely concealed frustration simmering beneath the veneer of wealth. Every request, every gesture, felt amplified, as if the entire room was on the verge of combustion. Then came Table 7. Harrison Davenport. He arrived like a storm cloud, radiating an almost violent energy. His dark suit, tailored to within an inch of its life, whispered of power and privilege. His eyes, the color of a bruised sky, scanned the room with an unsettling intensity, settling on nothing and no one. Beside him, Veronica Lancaster, an ice queen draped in scarlet, exuded disdain with every carefully calculated breath. Her lipstick was a weapon, her jewelry a declaration of war. They were trouble from the moment they were seated. Davenport ignored Maya completely, didn't even flicker an acknowledgement as she approached. Veronica, however, watched her with undisguised contempt. He didn't so much as ask for the wine list. He summoned it. A snap of his fingers, a low growl aimed at the tablecloth, an expectation of instant compliance that made Maya's teeth clench. "Of course, sir. Can I offer you some water while you decide?" she asked, the practiced politeness feeling like a lie. Davenport finally looked up, his gaze lingering on her apron before flicking away dismissively. "Just the wine list." It was Veronica who sneered. "He's had a trying day, darling," she purred, her voice dripping with saccharine sympathy. "The LVMH deal is being difficult." Maya retrieved the heavy leather-bound tome, her fingers tightening around its spine. Davenport snatched it from her, flipping through the pages with an air of profound boredom. "Bring the Euro 5 Sassicaia," he barked, tossing the menu back onto the table with careless abandon. It grazed a water glass, sending a cascade of ice water directly into Veronica's lap. Her shriek echoed through the restaurant. "You clumsy oaf!" she hissed, glaring at Maya as if she had personally orchestrated the disaster. "My sincerest apologies, madam," Maya managed, grabbing a fresh napkin. "Let me help you." "Don't touch me!" Veronica snapped, batting her hand away. Davenport sighed, the sound laced with exasperation. "For God's sake, can't you do anything right?" he snarled, his voice cutting through the air like a shard of glass. "Now my guest is soaked. Get your manager. Get someone competent." The word competent slammed into Maya like a physical blow. Competent was juggling a dozen orders while reciting a wine list in Latin. Competent was diffusing a tantrum over truffle shavings with a smile. Competent was sacrificing her dreams, one double shift at a time. Robert, her manager, materialized beside them, a sweat slick on his forehead. He bowed and scraped, offering apologies and complimentary appetizers, his obsequiousness making Maya's skin crawl. Davenport barely registered his presence, already lost in his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. Maya was relegated to serving them, a task that felt less like a job, more like a penance. Every interaction was laced with disdain. When she poured the ridiculously expensive wine, Davenport watched her with hawkish intensity. When she delivered his filet, he declared it 2 degrees over his requested medium rare, despite the chef's meticulous temperature check. Through it all, Maya maintained her composure, retreating into the familiar sanctuary of her imagination. She envisioned the geometric pattern of the steak's marbling, transformed into a bold textile design. She felt the weight of the jacquard loom in her mind, the precise choreography of the threads. The final straw came with the dessert menus. Veronica, after a long pause, looked Maya up and down with blatant, malicious amusement. "We'll take the tiramisu," she said, her voice laced with venom, "and a new waitress. This one's depressing to look at." The insult, so casual, so carelessly cruel, shattered Maya's carefully constructed facade. It wasn't just about her. It was about all the underpaid, underappreciated workers who were treated as invisible by the privileged few. It was about the exhaustion, the injustice, the crushing weight of unfulfilled dreams. Something inside her snapped. She placed the dessert menus neatly on the table. Her smile vanished, replaced by a quiet, unwavering fire. The hum of the restaurant faded, the clinking of glasses muted. There was only table 7. "No," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the dining room chatter. Several nearby tables went silent, their occupants turning to stare. Davenport looked up, annoyance flickering in his eyes. "No? What do you mean, no?" "I mean no," Maya repeated, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice remained unwavering. "You will not be getting a new waitress, and you will not be getting tiramisu. You will be getting the check." Veronica gasped, a sound of theatrical outrage. "How dare you?" Davenport leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you have any idea who I am?" That was it, the classic arrogant line, the embodiment of all the injustice in the world. A strange, liberating calm washed over Maya. She was going to be fired. The Parsons Fund would have to wait, but in that moment, she didn't care. She had her dignity. "Yes," Maya said, her voice ringing with clarity in the now silent restaurant. Every eye was on them. "I know exactly who you are. You're the man at table 7. You're the man who snaps his fingers because he thinks speaking is beneath him. You're the man who blames a server for a glass you knocked over. You're the man who wears a $50,000 watch but doesn't have the decency to say please or thank you." She took a breath, her gaze unwavering. "You sit here in your expensive suit, talking about your multi-million-dollar deals, and you treat the person serving your food like she's nothing, less than nothing, a piece of inconvenient furniture." She turned her head slightly to include Veronica. "And you? You think it's clever to mock someone for trying hard? That effort you find so depressing is what pays for my education. It's what keeps this city running while you sit here in your bubble of privilege, mistaking cruelty for personality." She looked back at Davenport, whose face was a thundercloud of disbelief and fury. He was speechless. For the first time all night, Harrison Davenport had no response. Maya leaned in, lowering her voice so only their table could hear, but in the dead silence, it carried. So, let me tell you who I am. I'm the person who has seen your true character tonight, and I'm telling you, all the money in the world can't buy you class. It hasn't bought you kindness, and it certainly hasn't bought you the right to treat another human being with such utter contempt. She straightened up, her body thrumming with adrenaline. Your check will be at the host stand. I'd advise you to pay it and leave. My manager will be with you shortly to accept my resignation. With that, she turned on her heel and walked away from the table, her head held high. A wave of stunned silence followed her, broken only by the sound of her own steady footsteps on the marble floor. She didn't look back. She walked straight to the employee locker room, past the shocked faces of her colleagues and the apoplectic face of Robert, who was already power-walking toward table 7. She grabbed her bag, her worn sketchbook tumbling to the floor. She scooped it up, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading, replaced by the cold, stark reality of what she had just done. She had just detonated her life. As she walked out the back door and into the cool, damp New York night, she took a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in a long time, it felt like her own. The walk to the subway station was a blur. The city lights of the Upper East Side, usually a source of distant aspiration, now felt mocking. Each gleaming storefront, each doorman standing sentry outside a palatial lobby seemed to underscore the chasm between her world and Harrison Davenport's. The rain began to fall, a fine, miserable drizzle that soaked through her thin jacket and plastered her hair to her face. She was unemployed, humiliated, and utterly terrified. By the time she reached her apartment in Astoria, a fourth-floor walk-up she shared with her roommate Sarah, the high of righteous indignation had completely evaporated, leaving a bitter metallic residue of fear. The Parsons Fund wasn't just on hold. It was about to be gutted to pay for next month's rent. She needed a lifeline, and fast. Sarah, a pragmatic nursing student who had seen Maya through countless crises, took one look at her face and immediately poured 2 generous glasses of cheap red wine. Okay, Sarah said, handing her a glass. Give me the postmortem. Did a customer finally push you over the edge? Maya sank onto the lumpy sofa, the springs groaning in protest. She recounted the entire saga, from the snapped fingers to her final fiery monologue. As she spoke, the words felt both powerful and impossibly foolish. Sarah listened intently, her expression shifting from sympathy to shock to something that looked suspiciously like pride. Damn, Maya, she breathed when Maya had finished. You actually said all that to his face? I did, Maya whispered, staring into her wine. And now I'm fired. I'm an idiot. No, you're not, Sarah said fiercely. You're a legend. That guy sounds like the king of all jerks. He deserved every word. We'll figure it out. We always do. I can pick up extra shifts at the hospital. You can start applying for new jobs tomorrow. But Maya knew it wasn't that simple. A new waitressing job would mean starting over, building seniority, earning the good shifts. The Parsons Fund, her beacon, had been extinguished. She pulled out her sketchbook, the pages slightly warped from the rain, and flipped through her designs. The patterns and sketches that were once a source of hope now seemed like childish fantasies. Who was she kidding? She was a waitress from Queens, not a designer destined for the pages of Vogue. The man at table 7 hadn't just cost her a job. He had stolen her belief. The embers of her anger cooled, leaving only a cold dread. The city felt vast and indifferent, her dreams impossibly distant. She needed help. She needed a miracle. Across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, the silence was just as profound, but infinitely more expensive. Harrison Davenport stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, the glittering expanse of Manhattan spread before him like a conquered territory. But tonight, he felt no sense of victory. The LVMH deal, the one that had consumed his every waking thought for months, had imploded. He replayed the scene at the restaurant in his mind, each word, each gesture, searing itself into his memory. The waitress's face, Maya, her name whispered by the frantic manager, haunted him. Her eyes not full of fear or subservience, but a clear, bright anger that had cut through his haze of stress and arrogance, replayed on loop in his mind. All the money in the world can't buy you class. Her words stung, a truth he had long ignored, a truth he had never expected to hear from someone he considered so far beneath him. He thought of the way she'd stood up straight, as if claiming her space in the world, and then he remembered something else. As she had rushed out, her sketchbook had fallen, and he had seen a brief flash of color, a design that hinted a raw talent. It was beautiful. That effort you find so depressing is what pays for my education. The words sliced through the fog of his self-pity. He felt the weight of his actions, the casual cruelty that had become second nature. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something akin to shame. He needed to fix this. He downed the last of his scotch, the alcohol doing little to numb the sharp edge of his self-disgust. He strode to his desk and opened his laptop. He didn't have her full name, but he had the restaurant, the time, and a first name. And he had Michael, his head of security, a man who could find a ghost in a fog bank. "Michael," Harrison said into his phone, his voice clipped. "I need you to find someone. Her name is Maya. She was a waitress at Trattoria Dal Valente on the Upper East Side. She was fired tonight at approximately 9:30 p.m. I need her full name and address, and I need it handled with the utmost discretion. No contact, just information." Within an hour, an encrypted email landed in his inbox. Maya Kowalski, an address in Astoria, Queens, a brief Stark employment history, and a note that she had been accepted into Parsons School of Design for the upcoming fall semester, contingent on securing funding. Harrison stared at the screen. It all clicked into place. The fire in her eyes wasn't just anger. It was the passion of a frustrated artist. The dignity she carried wasn't arrogance. It was the pride of someone fighting for a dream. He knew what he had to do. A simple apology wouldn't suffice. Words were cheap. He dealt in action. He picked up the phone again, this time calling the private client liaison at his bank. The conversation was short and direct. The next day, Maya was deep in the soul-crushing vortex of online job boards. Waitress, hostess, barista. The roles all blended into a gray paste of minimum wage and feigned enthusiasm. She was so absorbed in the monotonous task that she almost missed the insistent buzzing of the doorbell. She ignored it, assuming it was a package for another tenant, but it buzzed again, more insistent this time. Sarah was at the hospital, so Maya dragged herself to the intercom. "Hello? Package for Maya Kowalski. Signature required." A crisp, professional voice answered. Confused, she buzzed him in. A moment later, a knock came at the door. She opened it to find a courier in a sharp black uniform with a silver arrow emblem on the breast pocket. Black Arrow Courier. He held a slim black cardboard envelope. It was heavy, made of a thick, textured stock that felt impossibly luxurious. "Ms. Kowalski?" "Yes." He handed her the envelope and a stylus. She scribbled her name on his digital tablet, her mind racing. Who would send her something like this? She hadn't ordered anything. She closed the door, her heart starting to beat a little faster. The envelope had no return address, just her name and address typed in an elegant, severe font. With trembling fingers, she broke the wax seal on the back, a simple stylized D, and slid out the contents. Inside were two things. The first was a single piece of heavy cream-colored cardstock. It was a letter, the same severe font as the envelope. "Ms. Kowalski, there is no adequate apology for my behavior last night. Your assessment of my character was astute, accurate, and frankly long overdue. You were right on all counts. My actions were inexcusable. Words are insufficient to rectify the damage I caused, not only to your evening, but to your employment status. I have learned that your effort is directed toward a place at Parsons School of Design. An artist should not be waiting tables. They should be creating. Please accept this, not as a gift, nor as an attempt to buy your forgiveness, but as an investment in a talent that deserves to be nurtured. The world has enough men like me. It needs more artists like you. Use it to fund your education. Use it to buy your supplies. Use it to build your future. No strings attached. Consider it restitution for a debt that cannot be paid in cash alone. Sincerely, Wernani Harrison Davenport. Maya's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the letter. She read it again, and then a third time, the words blurring through a film of tears. It was an apology more profound and insightful than she could have ever imagined. Then she looked at the second item that had been in the envelope. It was heavy, metallic, and anodized black. It felt cool and impossibly solid in her hand. For a moment, she didn't understand what it was. Then she saw the familiar American Express branding, rendered in stark silver against the black titanium. It was the American Express Centurion card, the mythical black card, an object of legend whispered about in the restaurant industry, reserved for the wealthiest people on the planet. And it had her name on it, Maya Kowalski. She sank to the floor, the black card in one hand, the letter in the other. The room tilted. This couldn't be real. It was a dream, a prank, a mistake. She stared at the card, at her own name embossed on the metal. It was an object from a different universe, a universe of penthouses and private jets and multi-million-dollar deals. And it was sitting on the worn linoleum floor of her Queens apartment. The Parsons Fund was no longer a dream. It was a reality sitting in her palm, black and heavy and terrifying. Harrison Davenport hadn't just apologized. He had handed her a key to a door she had only ever dreamed of knocking on, and now she had to decide whether she was brave enough to use it. For 2 full days, the black card sat on Maya's small, cluttered desk, like a dormant piece of alien technology. It seemed to hum with a silent, intimidating energy. She'd pick it up, feel its impossible weight, and immediately put it down again, her fingerprints smudging the matte black surface. It was a solution to all her problems. It was also the biggest problem she'd ever had. "It's a bribe," she said to Sarah on the third night, pushing her untouched dinner around her plate. "It's conscience money. He's trying to buy his way out of feeling like a world-class jackass." "Okay, maybe," Sarah countered, pointing her fork at Maya. "But who cares, Maya? This is your dream on a platter. A very, very expensive titanium platter. Parsons' tuition is what, 60 grand a year, plus supplies, living expenses. This card is a nuclear-powered solution to a rowboat-sized problem. Take the win." "It's not a win, it's a handout," Maya insisted, her voice rising with frustration. "I wanted to earn it. My effort, my double shifts, my work. This feels like I'm being paid off for being insulted. It feels dirty." "What's dirty is a system where a brilliant designer has to serve entitled pigs like him just to get a shot," Sarah retorted. "He's not offering you a blank check because you're a victim. Read the letter again. He said it's an investment in talent. He saw your sketchbook, didn't he? He saw something in you." Sarah's words hit home. An artist should not be waiting tables. They should be creating. The line had replayed in Maya's mind 1,000 times. It showed an understanding she hadn't expected. He hadn't just apologized for his rudeness. He had acknowledged her identity. Still, her pride was a formidable barrier. Accepting this felt like surrendering, like admitting she couldn't do it on her own. It felt like she would forever be indebted to the man who had humiliated her. "I can't just take it," Maya said finally, a new resolve hardening in her voice. "If this is an investment, as he calls it, then we're going to treat it like one. There have to be terms, my terms." She spent the next hour drafting an email. It was the most difficult thing she had ever written. She deleted and rewrote the first line 20 times. Finally, she settled on something direct and professional. Subject: Your correspondence. Mr. Davenport, thank you for your letter and the enclosed card. Your apology is accepted. While I appreciate the sentiment behind your gesture, I cannot accept it as a gift. My education is my own responsibility. However, you use the word investment, and on that basis, I am willing to have a conversation. If you are serious about this, I propose we meet to discuss terms, not as a benefactor and a recipient, but as two professionals entering into an agreement, alone, with a structured repayment plan to commence 1 year after my graduation, with interest. I will not be bought, and my forgiveness is not for sale. But my talent is for hire, and while I appreciate the sentiment behind your gesture, I cannot accept it as a gift. My education is my own responsibility. However you use the word investment, and on that basis I am willing to have a conversation. If you are serious about this, I propose we meet to discuss terms not as a benefactor and a recipient, but as two professionals entering into an agreement alone with a structured repayment plan to commence 1 year after my graduation with interest. I will not be bought and my forgiveness is not for sale, but my talent is for hire and my ambition is available for investment. If you agree to these conditions, I am available to meet this Friday, not at a restaurant on the Upper East Side, but at a coffee shop of my choosing in my neighborhood. Let me know your decision. Sincerely, Maya Kowalski. She hit send before she could lose her nerve, her heart hammering as if she'd just run a marathon. She had thrown the gauntlet back. She had reclaimed her power. Now the ball was in his court. The reply came in less than 10 minutes. Subject re your correspondence. Ms. Kowalski, your terms are more than acceptable. They are admirable. Friday, name the place and time. HD. Maya stared at the email, a slow smile spreading across her face. This wasn't a surrender. This was a negotiation. The place she chose was the Daily Grind, a small, unpretentious coffee shop in Atoria with mismatched furniture and the best espresso in the borough. It was her territory, here. She wasn't an employee. She was a local. She arrived 15 minutes early on Friday, choosing a small table in the corner that gave her a clear view of the door. At precisely 10 a.m., Harrison Davenport walked in. He was transformed. Gone was the severe, perfectly tailored suit. He wore dark jeans, a simple gray cashmere sweater, and a well-worn leather jacket. Without the armor of his corporate attire, he looked younger, less intimidating, and profoundly out of place. He scanned the room, his eyes still the color of a stormy sea, now holding a flicker of uncertainty. Their eyes met, and he gave a hesitant nod before walking over to her table. Miss Kowalski, he said, his voice softer than she remembered. My Mr. to Davenport, she replied, not standing. Please sit. He slid into the chair opposite her, the small table suddenly feeling even smaller. An awkward silence hung between them, thick with the memory of their last encounter. Thank you for agreeing to meet me, he began. And for your email, it was humbling. Honesty usually is. Maya said, her voice neutral. She gestured to the counter. Can I get you a coffee? It's not sassy, Kaya, but the caffeine is effective. A faint smile touched his lips. I'll get it. What would you like? Black coffee, please. When he returned with their drinks, he placed a black leather portfolio on the table between them. I had my legal team draft a preliminary loan agreement based on your email, he said, pushing it toward her. It outlines a principal amount to cover 4 years of tuition and living expenses, with a standard interest rate repayment to begin 12 months post-graduation with a 10-year term. Of course, all clauses are negotiable. Maya was taken aback by his preparedness. She opened the portfolio. It was a formal, legally binding document. He had taken her seriously. He had respected her terms. Why are you doing this? She asked, looking up from the papers, her gaze sharp. And the truth this time, not the lines from your letter. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. He looked tired. The letter was the truth, he said quietly, but it wasn't the whole truth. That night, I was on the verge of losing the biggest deal of my career, a $700 million merger. I was angry. I was stressed, and I was taking it out on everyone around me. It's not an excuse, but it's the context. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. But the real reason I'm here is this. He hesitated. When you walked away, your sketchbook fell. It was open for just a second. I saw one of your designs. Maya's breath caught in her throat. It was a pattern, he continued, his voice, full of a new energy, black and gold. It looked like, like shattered glass, but beautiful, symmetrical. I run a private equity firm, Meyer. We invest in businesses. We specialize in identifying potential where others don't see it. My entire career is built on recognizing a single brilliant spark in a sea of mediocrity. He paused, letting the words sink in. Your words that night showed me your character, but that 1-second glimpse of your sketchbook showed me your genius. This isn't charity. This is the best kind of investment I can make. The kind that isn't about numbers on a page, but about tangible, world-changing talent. I am doing this because I believe you will be a monumental success, and I want to be able to say I had a small part in it. And selfishly, because I hope that one day when your company goes public, my firm gets to handle the IPO. Maya was stunned into silence. He hadn't just seen her anger. He'd seen her art. He'd seen the things she held most sacred, the part of her she thought was invisible to the world. The compliment coming from this man in this context was more powerful than any amount of money. She slowly closed the portfolio. "The interest rate is too low," she said, her voice firm again, though the ice within her had begun to thaw. "We'll set it at the prime rate plus 2%. I want this to be a profitable investment for you, Mr. Davenport." Harrison looked at her, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face for the first time. It transformed him, chasing the shadows from his eyes. "Then we have a deal, Miss Kowalski. We have a deal, Mr. Davenport." She confirmed a matching smile, finally reaching her own lips. She slid the black card out of her wallet and placed it on the table between them. "And as for this," she said, "I'll be keeping meticulous records. You'll get a quarterly report detailing every single expense, tuition, art supplies, rent, nothing else." "I wouldn't expect anything less," he said. They shook on it, his hand warm and firm around hers. It wasn't the end of a conflict, but the beginning of a complex and unexpected partnership. As Maya walked home, the city didn't feel mocking anymore. The sun broke through the clouds and the streets of Queens felt like the runway to her future. She hadn't just gotten a loan. She had found an unlikely believer, and for the first time, the weight of the black card in her pocket didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a tool. September arrived with a crisp autumnal energy that mirrored Maya's own. Walking onto the Greenwich Village campus of Parsons School of Design felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. The air buzzed with creativity, the hallways a kaleidoscope of punk rock aesthetics, minimalist chic, and avant-garde experiments. These were her people. For the first time, she wasn't Maya the waitress. She was Maya Kowalski, a design student. She paid her tuition in full at the Bucier's office. The woman behind the counter didn't even blink as she ran the Centurion card. The transaction, which represented more money than Maya had ever seen in her life, was completed with a mundane, anticlimactic beep. But for Maya, it was the sound of her dream starting. She threw herself into her studies with a ferocious dedication. Late nights were no longer spent scrubbing floors, but hunched over drafting tables, her hands stained with ink and dye instead of dishwater. She filled sketchbook after sketchbook, her mind exploding with ideas that had been dormant for years. Her professors quickly took notice, her unique perspective blending organic forms with harsh industrial geometry. A style forged in the contrast between her Queens neighborhood and the Manhattan skyline was fresh and compelling. As per their agreement, she sent Harrison a meticulously detailed expense report at the end of each month. It was an itemized list of every dollar spent. Tuition installments, fabric swatches from mood-specialized Japanese inks, textbooks, her share of the rent. She kept it strictly professional. He would always reply with a simple "received." "Thank you, HD." But after the third report, his reply changed. "Received. The report looks perfect. I was wondering if you might be open to having dinner sometime to discuss your progress. As an investor, I'm keen to hear about let's call it, the human return on my investment." Strictly business, of course. Maya hesitated. Their agreement was financial, but his logic was sound. An investor would want a progress report. She agreed, suggesting a casual bistro in the West Village. Neutral ground. That dinner changed everything. The strictly business pretense evaporated within the first 10 minutes. He asked about her classes, and his interest was genuine. He didn't just nod along. He asked insightful questions about her design philosophy, about the historical influences on her work, about the technical challenges of screen printing versus digital printing. He spoke of art and architecture with a surprising depth of knowledge. In turn, she found herself asking about his world. Not the ruthless deal-making, but the psychology of it. What did it feel like to build something from nothing? What was the art in a successful negotiation? She discovered a man far more complex than the caricature she had met at the restaurant. He was driven, yes, but also possessed a razor-sharp intellect and a dry, self-deprecating wit that she hadn't expected. That one dinner became a monthly occurrence. Then bi-weekly they called them investor meetings, a shared joke that allowed them to navigate the strange, undefined space they occupied. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily from her projects to his, from art history to market trends, from their childhoods to their hopes for the future. Mia learned that Harrison wasn't old money. He was the son of a steelworker from Pittsburgh. He had clawed his way to the top on scholarships, ambition, and an inhuman capacity for work. His arrogance, she realized, wasn't the easy confidence of the inherited rich, but the brittle armor of someone terrified of sliding back down. He, in turn, was captivated by her. He was drawn to her passion, her unshakable integrity, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about creating something beautiful. She was the antithesis of the transactional, cynical world he inhabited. She was real. One chilly November evening, as they walked through Washington Square Park after one of their meetings, he stopped under the glow of a street lamp. "You know," he said, his voice quiet, "these are the best investments I've ever made." "My tuition fees?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. "No," he said, his gaze serious. "These hours with you." And in the quiet of the park, surrounded by the murmur of the city, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of power or possession, but one of tenderness and vulnerability. It was a question, and Maya answered by kissing him back the cold night air, forgotten. Their relationship shifted from a professional arrangement to a deep personal connection. It was a slow burn built on a foundation of mutual respect and an undeniable chemistry. Harrison became her biggest cheerleader, attending her student showcases, his face in the crowd, radiating a quiet pride. Maya, in turn, became his confidant, the one person he could be vulnerable with, the one who reminded him of the man he wanted to be. But the world they inhabited was small, and secrets in the upper echelons of New York society have a short shelf life. The complication arrived, as it always does, in a slash of red and a cloud of expensive perfume. It was at a gallery opening in Chelsea that Harrison had invited her to. Maya, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress of her own design, felt a newfound confidence. She was holding her own, discussing postmodernism with a gallery owner, when a familiar icy voice cut through the air. "Well, well, Harrison, I see you've taken up rescuing stray kittens. How philanthropic of you." Maya turned. Veronica Lancaster stood there, a champagne flute in her hand, her eyes sweeping over Mia with undisguised venom. She looked from Harrison's hand, which was resting on the small of Maya's back, to Mia's face. "I remember you," Veronica purred, a cruel smile playing on her lips, the little waitress with the big mouth. "I see you found a much more effective way to get what you want. Tell me, is he paying for the dress too? Or is that part of the tuition package?" The insult was designed to reduce Maya back to the girl who served her tiramisu. But Maya was not that girl anymore. Before Harrison could unleash the thunder she saw gathering in his eyes, Maya stepped forward, a calm smile on her face. "Veronica, it's lovely to see you again," she said, her voice even and cool. "And yes, he is. It's all part of the investment. Harrison is a very shrewd businessman. He only invests in ventures with a high potential for return." She met Veronica's glare without flinching. "You of all people should know what it's like to be on the losing end of one of his deals." Veronica's face tightened, the jab at the failed LVMH merger, hitting its mark. She shot a look of pure hatred at Mayer before turning on her heel and stalking away. Harrison looked at Mia, a mixture of fury and awe on his face. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice tight with anger at Veronica. "I shouldn't have exposed you to that," Harrison Mears said, touching his arm. "I'm not made of glass, and she's not wrong about one thing. You did invest in me, and I plan on making you look like a genius." But Veronica wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. She was a rival scorned both professionally and, in her mind, personally. She saw Mara not just as Harrison's new partner, but as a symbol of her own humiliation, and she began to plot. The sabotage was subtle at first. A rumor whispered at a cocktail party that Harrison Davenport was dating a charity case. a snide comment to a fashion journalist about the questionable origins of his new protégé. But Veronica was patient. She was waiting for the right moment to strike, not just to hurt Ma, but to destroy her credibility in the world she was just beginning to conquer. The opportunity came during Parsons' prestigious end-of-year runway show, where the best student designs were showcased to a panel of industry titans editors, from Vogue and WWD buyers from Bergdorf Goodman, and designers from major fashion houses. It was Mia's chance to make her mark. Her final piece, a stunning evening gown featuring her signature shattered glass pattern, meticulously hand-beaded onto black silk, was the culmination of a year of tireless work. It was her masterpiece. 2 days before the show, a blog post appeared on a notorious fashion gossip site. The headline was "Explosive Parsons Prodigy or Prolific Plagiarist," the unsettling similarity between an up-and-comer and a fast fashion knockoff. The post featured 2 images side by side. On the left was a photograph of a cheap polyester dress being sold on a mass-market European retail website. The dress featured a crude, simplified version of Mir's unique shattered glass design. On the right was a photo of Mir's original design sketch, which had been leaked from inside the university. The implication was clear and devastating. Mia had either stolen her core design from a cheap online brand, or she had sold out her own design for a quick buck before her official debut. Her dream was turning into a public nightmare, and Veronica Lancaster's fingerprints were nowhere to be seen. Yet Mia knew with a sickening certainty that she was behind it all. The accusation hit Mia like a physical blow. The blog post with its damning headline, "Parsons Prodigy or Prolific Plagiarist," felt designed to shatter her world. Staring at her soul-bearing sketch next to a cheap, crude copy, she felt the walls of her new life crumble. The online comments were a torrent of vitriol branding her a fraud. The dream had become a public nightmare. The fallout was swift and brutal. Her phone buzzed with a mixture of concerned and accusatory messages. The university, forced to protect its reputation, launched an honor code investigation. Her professor, Madame Dubois, regretfully informed her that her masterpiece, the culmination of a year's tireless work, was being pulled from the final runway showcase. When she finally called Harrison, her voice was a hollow whisper. As she explained the situation, a terrible silence stretched across the line from London. In that single dreadful second, a new fear eclipsed all others. What if he doubted her? "Harrison," she breathed, her voice cracking. "I'm booking a flight," he said, his tone a low-controlled rumble of fury. "I'll be there in 7 hours. Don't talk to anyone. We're going to fight this." He didn't doubt her. But as she hung up, Maya knew she wouldn't just wait to be rescued. This was her name, her design, her fight. She channeled her fear into focused action, turning her small apartment into a war room. She was a designer. Her process was her proof. She unearthed every piece of her creative journey. The first charcoal thumbnail sketches from over a year ago, dated and stored in old books. The time-stamped Adobe Illustrator files on her laptop. The progression of photos on her phone documenting the gown's creation, from dyeing the silk to sewing the final shimmering bead. It was an undeniable timeline of her work. When Harrison arrived haggarded from the transatlantic flight, but with eyes blazing, he found her not defeated, but armed with evidence. "I was so afraid you'd doubt me," she admitted as he wrapped her in a fierce hug. "Maya," he said, pulling back to look her in the eye, "I invested in your character long before your career. Doubting you never crossed my mind. My only thought was, who do I have to destroy?" "For this," Veronica Lancaster Mir said, her voice turning to steel, "but proving it is the problem." "Leave that to me," Harrison said grimly. He set his own machine in motion, mobilizing a team of digital forensic experts and his formidable head of security, Michael. The instructions were simple. Find the link between Veronica, the fast fashion website, and the leak at Parsons. While Harrison's forces moved in the shadows, Mia stepped into the light. She requested a formal hearing with the Parsons Honor Code Committee and compiled her evidence into a flawless dossier of her innocence. She walked into the hearing room. Harrison, a silent pillar of support behind her, and laid out her case. She didn't just show them the final design, she walked them through its birth from the first pencil scratch to the last stitch. This design wasn't stolen, she concluded, her voice ringing with unshakable conviction. It was grown. The dress on that website is a cheap echo. My work is the original voice. The committee was visibly moved, the evidence overwhelming. As they began to deliberate, Harrison's phone vibrated. He glanced at an incoming email from Michael, his expression hardening into one of grim satisfaction. The proof had arrived. The web Veronica had woven was completely exposed. Michael had uncovered the financial trail. The fast fashion company was owned by a shell corporation recently funded by Veronica's investment firm. He had found the source of the leak, a disgruntled work-study student who confessed to being paid for access to the school's digital archives. The final nail in the coffin came from the forensics team, who had traced the IP address of the anonymous tip to the gossip blog. It originated from a device in a Parisian hotel where Veronica had been staying the previous week. Harrison made one more call to the editor-in-chief of WWD, providing the irrefutable proof of the entire scheme. The following 24 hours saw a dramatic reversal. The Honor Code Committee issued a full public exoneration of Mia. The gossip blog, facing a massive lawsuit, printed a graveling retraction that exposed Veronica's plot. WWD ran a feature story not just on the sabotage, but on the incredible talent and resilience of the designer at its center. Veronica's world imploded. Her investors fled. Her reputation was destroyed, and she was left in the ruins of her own malice. But simple vindication wasn't enough. On the night of the Parsons showcase, Madame Dubois made an unprecedented announcement of a surprise final piece. The lights dimmed. A single spot hit the runway, and out walked a model wearing Mir's gown. A collective gasp swept through the audience. The shattered glass design was breathtaking. The hand-sewn beads caught the light shimmering like a constellation of stars, a testament to defiant beauty. As the model reached the end of the runway, Maya stepped out to a thunderous standing ovation. In the crowd, she found Harrison's face, and he was looking at her with an expression of such profound love and pride, it took her breath away. The show was a triumph. Mia was mobbed by editors and buyers, but one conversation stood out. A senior executive from Hermes, who had been on the judging panel, didn't just want her gown. He wanted to discuss a capsule collection. Months later, on a bright Soho morning, a small crowd gathered outside a new boutique. The sign above the door was simple, elegant script, Kowalski. Inside, Maya stood beside Harrison, her hand in his, looking at the space filled with her creations. It was the culmination of everything. The fight in the restaurant, the black card, the public battle. It had all led here. You know, Harrison said, his voice quiet with emotion, that night at Valente's. It was the best deal I ever lost. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder, a radiant smile on her face as she looked at her name on the wall. For me, she said, it was the night I learned my own value. Her journey hadn't been a fairy tale. It had been a war she had won herself. The black card had opened a door, but her talent, her full, and her unbreakable will had built the world on the other side. And that's where Maya's story leaves us for now. Not at an ending, but at a brilliant new beginning. Her journey shows us that true wealth isn't found in a bank account or on a titanium credit card. It's found in our spirit, in our integrity, and in the unshakable belief in our own talent. Maya Kowalski was never a victim. She was a warrior who just needed the right battlefield. Harrison Davenport learned that power without character is meaningless, and the best investment you can ever make is in another person's potential. Their story is a powerful reminder that one moment of courage can change everything. If this story of resilience, love, and redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that their fight is worth it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that will inspire and move you. What did you think of Maya's final move? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening.